to Nišville Jazz Festival channels, and I'm really thrilled and proud to have Mark King, the legendary Mark King, as a guest today. Mark, thank you for joining us today. How do you feel today?
I feel fantastic, Nana. Thank you so much. I can't tell you how excited we are to be coming to Nišville Jazz Festival. It's we've never been to Serbia. It's a first for us, and we've been going such a lot of years. So I'm just really thrilled that we're finally getting to come and play for you guys.
Yeah, thank you. So basically, let me put in the perspective, for the younger audience and so on, who Mark King is, why he's legendary, and why Level 42 is such an amazing band for so many years lasting. The main characteristics of Level 42 was your bass playing. And we know that, that kind of bass playing goes from Larry Graham, who really invented the slap and everything else.
Yeah, yeah, for
And they
sure.
have, like the bass players in the funk music style in the 70s who were the leaders of the bands. There were a lot of new bass players, great bass players in the beginning of the 80s, especially in the United Kingdom, like Derek Forbes from Simple Minds or Mika from Japan, even Nick Becks from KG Goo. But none of them succeeded in what you did, and you became the frontman, which is basically an odd thing for a bass player, especially when you moved to that slight part of the pop career of yours at the second part of the 80s. So having a bass player who's a lead singer, who's a frontman of the band, was really something that put you in front of everything that was happening at the time. How did you get to that idea, and how did everything happen?
Well, I think it's really a case of being in the right place at the right time. That if I was a young guy coming through now, there are so many amazing bass players that everybody gets to see that I wouldn't stand a chance. I wouldn't stand a chance in hell. But I did come through at the right time with three of my best friends, and that was Boone Gould and Phil Gould, and of course Mike Lindup, who still plays in the band with me today. And we were really, really lucky because we got together as four friends who really enjoyed playing music and the music that we loved, which came mainly from the States. I have to say that it was very much American influenced. And you mentioned the great Larry Graham, who has latterly become a friend, and I've done shows with Larry, and he's a wonderful man. And of course, the work that he did in Sly and the Family Stone was absolutely revolutionary.
Yeah.
And of course, we just recently lost Sly, sadly. But it's the legacy is there forever. Anyway, we were listening to a lot of American funk, a lot of American soul. We were huge James Brown fans, and of course the jazz side to the American thing. So everything that came from Miles Davis's electric fusion period, the likes of John McLaughlin, of course, which led us to the Mahavishnu Orchestra, and all of those amazing musicians like Bill Cobham and Jan Hammer, Jerry Goodman and Rick Laird. And then, of course, Chick Corea. And Chick Corea went on to form Return to Forever. And that introduced me to this amazing guy, Stanley Clarke, who I think was probably my biggest influence of all the bass players over the years. And so we were listening to all of these guys and trying to come up with our own version of it. I think that's the best thing that any musician can do. It's like you have these amazing teachers. You don't have to go and sit in a room with somebody to say, you put your finger here, you put your finger there, you do this here. If you're a musician, you can see it and you get it because you go, oh yeah, and that's enough. And then the inspiration, the fire's lit, and you kind of take it there and run with it. And if you're lucky, you kind of have your own version of it. That's really what should happen. Is that it's like in a relay, you take the baton from the last dude who was chasing up behind you, and you grab it and you run on, and at some point hopefully you're going to pass it on to the next guy. And that's really what music, and how a band works and how a band forms and how a band develops, importantly. And you mentioned something interesting, Nana, that the very first record we made, a very strange song that you wouldn't think was a pop song, but it was at the time in 1980 when there was a movement, an underground movement called Brit Funk was coming through, that was run mainly by a cabal of DJs who were running all night soul weekenders and this kind of thing. And the fashion then was to put out white labels on vinyl. So a white label was just exactly that. It just said A on one side and B on the other side on a white label, no other information whatsoever. So people were keen to get white labels because they had no idea about who the artist was. They either liked the music or they didn't. There were no pictures on there. There was no information. And, I got a good friend called Giles Peterson, who is a fantastic DJ. And really a musicologist, I mean, he runs his own label and started the whole acid jazz thing. But Giles, when he began his career, the very first 12-inch white label he got was one of ours. And so it's just lovely that he always reminds me of that. And he said, we didn't, nobody had any idea who you were, what was happening. We just liked the track, and there's a great honesty in that, in a way. So I'm sure when we showed up on stage, the audiences were very disappointed, thinking, "Oh man, we thought we had some really cool band from the States had flown in."
The MTV, and after that, and after what happened is, yeah, like you have to
Yeah.
be pretty beautiful, know how to dance,
Yeah.
and so on, so on,
It,
so on.
it, it's true that that's sort of the first 5 years of the 1980s. There was such a change going on because about 1982, 83, well, 1981, 82, you had to start coming up with promotional videos, and that we're I mean, you can see the state of me now. When I'm at home, I just lounge about in t-shirts, and we used to wear that on stage, and then people were going, no, 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 you can't do that anymore. You have to. And I'll go back to Larry Graham again. It's incredible when that cat stands on stage with his white fedora and his white suit, and the band are all in hats. You
Right, yeah.
think, yeah, you see, that's kind of part of the show too. So you take it, you roll with the whole thing, you go with it all, and with a bit of luck, you get somewhere.
How do you see Level 42 at this moment with what you're doing with the present state? Because a lot of musicians are, of course, uh, even mad, angry about what is happening with streaming services, not getting paid, not
Yeah,
buying records anymore, royalties
yeah.
are, sinking down. So, and how do you cope with that, being a seasoned musician with experience and with knowledge?
It's tricky for me because I can't say that personally I have a problem with the way we can access our music now. I may have a problem with the way the way money's distributed because a huge income stream has been taken away from musicians and songwriters. And if you do that, you're not going to get any more music because that's you have to make your money from your music, otherwise you can't make more music. And that much is quite clear and obvious. But I absolutely adore the way that can you can find any song at any time. We never had this back in the 80s, and certainly growing up through the 70s. You had to order a record if you were lucky enough to be able to hear it. The only, you hardly ever saw any music on television. So you had to be listening into the radio. And if there was a song that came up, you desperately you tried to write down what the name of that song was or who the musician was that did it. And then you had to be like Sherlock Holmes and go through this whole system of investigating and trying to find out, detective work of how to find who the heck it was that you were listening to and what's going on with them. So nowadays, with YouTube, it's an amazing thing because I love YouTube. I think it's the best channel on any, television, anywhere in the world because you can you can look up all of this old music, all of the great stuff that I remember the very first time I saw the Mahavishnu Orchestra on terrestrial television. It was on BBC Two, an in concert show, and of course, we had no way of recording it back then. So you saw the show and that was it. You had to sort of live with your memory of it and and occasionally you bump into somebody else who'd also seen that show. And it was like, oh my goodness, did you see that? The guy had a glass drum kit and what keyboard was that guy playing? Or, all of this stuff that, because we had no idea. Now I can watch that very same show. It was like, to me, it's like, oh, that's the thing. I was 14 years old when I first saw this. I'm 66 years old now. So the joy for me of being able to see all of this stuff that I grew up with, and consequently, all the young guys can watch this. They can watch all the greats all the time. And the standard of musicianship, I really think, is going through the roof. The ability of young players now just leaves me awestruck. It's just quite incredible. So it's, for me, it's two things. There's, I think the good side actually outweighs the bad side.
Yeah.
And my whole feeling in life anyway is that you should always try and be positive and take the good out of something. Where we're going in the future, I don't know, because who knows what's around the corner. We're here right now, so let's like to make the most of everything and crack on.